Hello and welcome once again to Crazy Comics and Stories. It's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. And at the other end of the series of tubes and wires that we call the internets is Joe, Crazy Writer. How you doing today, Joe?
You know, I once wrestled an anaconda for 4 days. Then I realized I was masturbating.
You remember The Undertaker, right?
I do.
What did The Undertaker do when people punched him?
Usually put him in a pile driver.
Before that?
Just stared at him.
Right.
Well, you're always the one who wanted, back when we were modeling ourselves on Wrestle Crap, that I would come up with just weird non sequiturs to launch into various topics.
I will continue to no sell.
Okay, I'll erase that file. I regret the error. Not that I was masturbating, just that I thought it was an anaconda.
I actually found out that I have made a mistake about comics. The old comics that nobody cares about.
Whoa. You got to tell me that. I didn't have my seatbelt on.
Do you remember?
Do I have to regret
you mentioned in your quest to mention every comic ever printed, the comic OG Whiz.
Yes.
From Gold Key.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a short-lived comic in the 70s about a little boy who inherits a toy company.
Yep.
And he runs it, and there was somebody who was supposed to have inherited it and didn't, who was always trying to screw up his plans to make it look like he didn't know what he was doing. Yep. And I don't remember that character's name.
I don't know. I'll go see if I can find my copy. Hang on a second. Keep talking.
But I said it was created and written by John Stanley, who did Little Lulu. And then when Little Lulu was canceled, he did the Nancy comic book. And that's really the only Nancy I liked till the most recent person took over Nancy. And even when I was a kid, when I would read the Nancy comic strip, I would say, why the hell isn't this as good as a comic book? But I have found out that I was wrong about John Stanley writing the comic.
You were?
John Stanley wrote the first issue only. After that, it was written by DC writer, who had been let go by DC, Steve Skeets, who is probably best known for his run on Aquaman in the 60s. But nope, basically John Stanley created the character and retired shortly after to actually teach art and things like that. So I wanted to correct that, because if you pick up some of the later issues and go, wow, this really sucks. What the hell is Cory talking about? Well, it's because they weren't written by the creator, John Stanley. So instead, go pick up those Little Lulu comics and those Nancy comics.
Otherwise, now you just have other things to, like, what the hell was Cory talking about?
Yeah, now you can just
use it. Other
comic. I don't want people, when they're reading a comic, to go, what the hell was Cory talking about? I want them to, when they're listening to the show, go, the hell is Cory talking about?
Yeah. Just, what the hell is he? And, of course, me, I regret the error.
As well you should. Joe, it's that time of the month again.
Whoa.
No, not when I get all drunk and stand up on the roof yelling at the neighbors.
Yeah, that's coming up on St. Patrick's Day. Yes. Which is also my mom's birthday.
Which is also the 1-year anniversary for me working from home. No, it's previews.
Oh, I was wondering what this big thing was in front of me here. Of course, as you know, this is always an interactive show. So grab your copy of previews number 390 for March 2021.
These are for books coming out in May.
Yeah. Or may not, depends on what
may or may not. Yes,
may or may not.
For most of the stuff we're talking about, it may not.
May or may not. Yeah. Let's see. And as usual, we just go right along with it. And I will start out. The first, of course, is Image, since they're the first one in the.
We should go over the cover.
Well, I don't know, because the cover we'll get to, because it's part of Dynamite. Because I actually have something for Dynamite.
I don't mean the we always give the cover The cover is the Invincible Red Sonja, which is a new Red Sonja series by Amanda Connor. But Joe, take a look on the side, on the spine of the previews.
Nothing important.
But save the date. Free Comic Book Day has been moved to August 14th of 2021.
Already can't get it off work, so no problem.
Celebrating 20 years of free comics. Free Comic Book Day actually started in 2001. Joe, what was the movie that they piggybacked on?
Ethel the Aardvark Quantity Surveillance, the Hand Jergens Ultra Healing Lotion Edition.
No, that was in the 70s.
Oh, that might have been that Anaconda night. Never mind, I had a long night.
2001. They piggybacked off the Spider-Man movie.
Spider-Man.
And Marvel planned to give out free copies of Ultimate Spider-Man #1 the day that Spider-Man #1 came out. They had them at theaters. But then they also did the first Free Comic Book Day, and now we're up to the 20th Free Comic Book Day. And if you, let's see if there's, because normally we just jump right to Image, but sometimes they tell us what kind of comics are coming out, and I'm looking.
Not yet.
And I'm looking.
See, that's what you get for reading spines.
And I'm looking.
I think it's one of those spine doctors looking for spina bifida or something.
And,
do you remember doing that in the 70s? Going down
yes.
to the lunchroom and bending over?
No, I remember doing it at the doctor's office.
Oh, we had to do it. I guess they brought people in and just were checking everybody. Just in
Anytime
case.
I was told to bend over in the lunchroom, it's because somebody was trying to take my lunch money.
Yeah.
But normally when they announce that they also have like this year's shirt and other
They didn't
merch,
really announce it.
merch.
They didn't really announce it. They just put it on the spine. That's just one of those things where pretty much everything, every square inch of your life will now be covered with some sort of advertisement.
But I know a couple of years ago, I actually bought the Free Comic Book Day shirt because it was drawn by Mike Allred. So I'm looking forward to what shirt they get this year. And if you order it early, you can get it before Free Comic Book Day. I wore my Free Comic Book Day shirt that year, and nobody noticed. So good advertising there. Image, Joe, what jumped out at you about Image this month?
Page 36, Time Before Time #1. The year is 2140, and to escape a world with no future, many turn to a syndicate, with a capital S, a criminal organization who, for the right price, will smuggle you back in time to a better life. After working for the syndicate for years, Tatsuo and Oscar decide to steal one of their boss's time machines, but soon find out that the one thing you can't run from is your past. And they give a really good 3-page preview. And basically they're sending, it starts out where they're sending a couple, it looks like a mom and her kid back, and the kid's like, what? No internet? Oh, it's not going to be invented for 20 years. You never told me. Would you shut up for a second? Because basically they're trying to tell you how not to, blow the fact that you're from the future. And then he jumps forward to 2041. He goes, all good? Yeah. Kid was a bit of a headache, but they're all settled in. Intriguing concept. Who knows, if they're lucky, this might be a show from Netflix soon, because I got to tell you, it occurred to me over the weekend as I was trying to organize my books and to read in some semblance of order. And in case you get all worried, no, I didn't actually read anything. I just sorted a lot. I know last week I said I would, but, I regret the error. Anyways, this sounds like an intriguing concept. The artwork and the 3 pages they previewed kind of clinched it for me. And so I'm real excited to see where they go with this one. There's a couple, I guess, images going down the incentive cover hole. So they've got 3 covers, it looks like, or maybe just 2. And then there's retailers. There's a no risk #1 title. That usually means they can order a lot. And if they don't like it, they can return it. So, if you're into science fiction or you're like me, I'm a sucker for a good time travel story. This one definitely caught my eye right away. What was first thing out of Image for you?
On page 50,
Oh, I'm on
the
that page
second
too.
volume of Hey Kids Comics by Howard
Yay!
Chaykin. This is a series he's doing that is a incredibly thinly veiled story of the people who worked in comics. The first one was about the 40s and 50s. He has said that this one is more about the 50s and 60s, which, to be honest, that's where Howard Chaykin's wheelhouse is. You give me a Howard Chaykin story either set in the 30s or the end of the 50s, and I'm going to be a happy, happy man because he just loves that time period, knows it so well. Chaykin knows where the bodies are buried and has absolutely no problem turning that information into stories. So this is going to be full of stuff that is thinly veiled enough that he can't be sued. But if you know enough, you can easily figure out who these characters are.
And if you don't know, just ask Cory. He'll figure it out for you.
I think what they call those when you write a novel that's kind of like that, it's called a romane clef.
You can't say that to me.
Yes, I can.
Well, you can
What's
turn
next
the
for you?
page 53. I'm going to point out because it's not under S for Savage Dragon, but if I know Cory has a lot of fans, a lot of ex-girlfriends, and several pending lawsuits up in the Great White North.
Hey! Canada
Here is your
loves
chance
me.
to
I
point
have
out
no pending lawsuits there. Here
North-
in the U.S., that's a different story, but
North
not in
Force
Canada.
number 1. Because you demanded it, Savage Dragon 259 reworked and reformatted to spotlight this all-new Canadian super team, eh? That's all I'm going to say about that. You're either into it or you ain't.
I think the only other thing that really jumped out at me is Die number 16 on page 49. And it's getting a spotlight because this is the start of a new story. If you're not reading Die, you should. It is, well, the premise is simple. Back when they were teenagers, a bunch of kids who played Dungeons and Dragons accidentally got sucked into the Dungeons and Dragons world they were playing in, and terrible things happened. And most of them came home, but not all. And now that they are in their late 20s, early 30s, they are brought back to that world, and things have gotten worse.
And don't say nothing because I just got paperback or the first trade paperback. There's 3 of them, and I'm looking forward. This is one that I picked up as issues, and then when it became crazily hot, I just sold them on eBay, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to pick this up, partially based on what Cory said, as trades. So someday in the future, I'll be telling you all about it. All about it. Every single thing. I'll just spill all the guts. Just like on page 59, Sunstone hardcover. Writer, artist, cover by, do I want to try that one? Saint Japan Seljuk. It's a big hardcover that apparently collects Sunstones, volume 1s through 3. It's back in print. 2 women deal with modern themes of sex, relationship, and fetishism in this romantic, erotic comedy. So beware all who enter, because to quote a few 100,000 readers on DeviantArt, I'm not into BDSM, but this story, I get it. I have no idea what this is about. Based on that alone, I'm going to get this hardcover. That's pretty much, I mean, every so often I like to point this out because I know we gloss over a lot of stuff in previews, and it's either stuff that either we're already buying or just didn't catch our fancy. And we always give you the invitation, if we've missed something that you think we should have pointed out, be sure to just drop us a line. But this is just proof. I do read everything in previews. I can't afford to buy everything in previews because I'd like to, but
Yeah, this was a budget buster month for me.
Oh.
Dark Horse.
Dark Horse. Let's see. I've only got one thing other than my usual stuff on page 90. And allow me to give you a moment to catch up as I try to do it as well.
I have this book as well.
Oh, do you? Oh, cool. Untold Horror hardcover. It's an insightful, I'm sorry, it contains insightful interviews of horror legends George Romero, John Landis, Joe Dante, Brian Yuzna, thank you, and more by a bunch of former editor-in-chiefs. I'm not even going to say his name. Oh, Dave Alexander. Sorry, that was easy. It was a magazine, Rue Morgue, about the scariest horror movies never made. It's a behind-the-scenes look into development hell to find the most frightening horror movies that never were, from the unmade Reanimator sequel to alternate takes on legendary franchises like Frankenstein and Dracula. This is a great behind-the-scenes look into developmental hell. If you're into the behind-the-scenes of movie making and things like that, this is definitely one that you want to pick up. I don't know if a book like this will be made into a soft cover. I kind of doubt it, but
yeah,
there's a chance to get it. Yeah,
this is going to be one that comes out and it's a severely limited audience.
Yeah, such as Cory and myself, because we're really into the behind the scenes stuff like this. Or if you have a friend who's really into horror movies, you know who I'm talking about. I remember once I came over to my my at the time girlfriend, now wife, and they were over at her friend's house. And as I come in, they're watching this horror movie where this naked woman is strung up over her head, and around her are 3 burnt bodies sitting upright in a chair, and suddenly she's on fire and screaming the way you would expect to scream if you were doused and put on fire. And I'm like, what in hell's are you watching? Just we like this blah 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 movie, and they're trying to explain it to me the way you explain Citizen Kane to me, how it's probably one of the best things ever out there, and I'm like, do I have to worry about dating either one of you two? And to this day, I have no idea what that movie was. All I know is the person at the end, since I was dumb enough to stay and watch it, he gets attacked by the corpses as they stand up, tie him overhead, douse him, and light him on fire. So I imagine that will not be in this book. However, I love the ad on the top there on page 60. That's what caught my attention. Jaws 3, People 0.
And I remember that movie ad.
Instead, we got Jaws 3D.
Yeah. If you go back page, there's a movie that never got made. From the man who wrote the original Buckaroo Banzai, we finally get a novel, Buckaroo Banzai Against the World Crime League, which was promised at the end of the Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. And it's one of those where Earl MacRausch for years has said, we've been, those of us who are fans of Buckaroo Banzai were like, why not just make it a novel? Why not just make it a novel? Why not just make it a novel? Well, almost 40 years later, here it is. A novel, and I believe we can thank Kevin Smith for this, because Kevin Smith and a production company announced that they were going to do a Buckaroo Banzai TV series, which caused people to kind of pop their head up and go, wait, we own the rights to that. Which killed the series, but they did reach out to Earl MacRausch and asked him to finally write this novel, and it's being published by Dark Horse. So if you're a Buckaroo Banzai fan, you already are excited about this. If you're not, go watch the movie. It's available on tons of streaming services. And if at the end of it you go, wow, I want to see more about that, this is what it is. Buckaroo Banzai was kind of an attempt to make a modern pulp hero. And the people involved said it was a lot like Doc Savage, in that Buckaroo Banzai is a physicist and a surgeon and a musician and great at all these things, and around him he has a group of people who are also very good at stuff, and they have adventures. just like with Doc Savage, he was, the smartest, the strongest, this and that. And, he had Monk and Ham and Long Tom and Johnny and the people who went along with him on his adventures. It came out in the summer of 1984, which was just an embarrassment of riches for big budget movies that were a lot of fun, like Gremlins and Ghostbusters and on and on and on. And it kind of got lost in the shuffle. But now we're finally getting this sequel. Will it be worth the wait? Of course not. Nothing could be, but I'm still going to like it.
Oh, yeah.
Joe, what else do you have?
That's it for Dark Horse. I will point out there's another Orville #1 coming out. So if you're fans of Orville and just waiting for season 3 to come up, go ahead, run the Dark Horse and get it, or your friendly neighborhood comic store.
And in our EC Watch, Vault of Horror #1 in trade paperback is coming out. The 3 horror comics, Vault of Horror, Tales from the Crypt, which started as Crypt of Terror, and let's see, it was Vault of Horror, Tales from the Crypt, and The Haunt of Fear, which I always thought was a weird name. Haunt of Fear. Basically, they're interchangeable in that they had kind of the same artists, and L. Feldstein wrote all the stories, but Tales from the Crypt, for some reason, is the one that most people jump onto. Vault of Horror is just as good. And I think that was all that I had for Dark Horse as well. I don't see anything else highlighted here. I did find it interesting that they are now doing video game cross jigsaw puzzles, because we've talked in the past about how the way Dark Horse was able to kind of save itself when it lost Buffy, Aliens, Star Wars, Predator, and their other media tie-ins that sold so well, was they did video game books. Well, jigsaw puzzles are having a resurgence, so why not video game jigsaw puzzles? So, Joe, should we go to DC or IDW next?
Let's go to DC, because I've got that filed. I look at DC using Discount Comic Book Service mostly because they have everything alphabetical. There's one thing I'm going to point out that I thought that was interesting, since they continue to do a very poor listing of any type of graphic novel that I might be interested in. There's a one-shot, Stargirl Spring Break Special #1. And Jeff Johns returns to his breakthrough hero Stargirl in this special one-shot. 2 different covers to choose from. And let's see, Todd Nook is doing the illustrations. So basically, Courtney's spring break plans aren't like your average high schoolers. Instead of hanging out with friends, she's heading out on an adventure with her stepfather, Pat Duggan, a.k.a. Stripe. That's Stripe with periods in between it all, because it stands for something, and I'm not going to tell you what. And teaming with his former team, the 7 Soldiers of Victory. The soldiers are forced to reunite again to unearth the secret 8th Soldier of Victory, but what other secrets lie buried, and what does it all mean for Courtney's future as Stargirl? So, and as it's a one-shot, and again, Jeff is one of those guys, he's getting up there where if I see him writing something, I don't know if I necessarily buy it if it was the phone book, but it does catch my attention to see what's going on. So that was the one thing from DC, other than, well, the other things I'm getting is Batman, Scooby-Doo. I decided I'm going to stick with that for a bit. Justice League, because Bendis is on it. The Other History of the DC Universe, because it's a 5-issue miniseries. And, of course, Transmetropolitan Book 5, which I will probably get to because I got Book 4 sitting right behind me, because that just came in my last box day. So that's it for me for DC. Very simple, very easy. Now I sit back and I listen to Cory, because sometimes Cory will mention something I may have overlooked or something I'm curious to get his opinion on.
The first thing that jumped out at me is DC is restarting Legends of the Dark Knight. And the first issue is written and drawn by Derek Robertson, who I have praised more than 100,000 times, either on this podcast or to people in comic shops. And Joe was actually just mentioned a book drawn by Derek Robinson, Transmetropolitan. Derek Robertson's going to be doing the first story arc. Legends of the Dark Knight was the comic that came out in 1989, and they pitched it as the first new Batman title in 20 years. And I think they actually even went further back than that, because they counted Batman Family as he was not in it. But they really pitched it as a big deal. Stores ordered tons of it, because this was during the run-up to the Batman movie. So you put Batman on something, it sold. And DC got the orders and went, holy crap, there's no way they're going to sell all these. So they put an outside cover on the cover with 4 different colors.
Variant covers.
So that maybe the shops would be able to sell more as variant covers. And it was kind of the first variant cover. Wasn't announced before it came out, by the way. But Legends of the Dark Knight lasted a long time. The premise at the beginning was that it would be 5-part stories, because it took 5 issues for a trade paperback, so that they could have these Batman trade paperbacks kind of being manufactured quickly using big name talent. And then first off, they then went, oh, okay, we're not going to do 5-part stories every time. Then it became, okay, it's going to tie in with the big Batman stories when we're doing big Batman crossovers. And then it kind of became, I would say after about 5-6 years, it became Batman fill-in stories, where every so often there would be a special story, but most of the time it was just not. So I'm hoping that they go back to the idea of, this is where, rather than doing a bunch of Batman miniseries, we just go to creators who are well known but not known for doing Batman and say, hey, got a Batman story? Could also be a good place where artists who haven't written before can write. People who haven't worked for DC can do tryouts. I loved Legends of the Dark Knight when it ran, because it was self-contained. And when it wasn't self-contained, I kind of was a little irritated. But we also are getting Milestone Returns, which is a reprint of the Digital First. The company Milestone was a company that came to an agreement with DC kind of in the mid-90s to do multicultural heroes. And people thought it was a company that DC created. Nope, they were a separate company that partnered with DC for their publishing. The one character that spun out of it that became rather big was Static, because Static got his own TV series. But they are finally doing a relaunch. I have already read this since it was a digital first, and I'm a big Milestone fan. They have a lot of the original creators on it too, by the way, like Dennis Cowan, Bill Sienkiewicz, Klaus Janson. It's written by Reginald Hudlin, who is a movie writer who's also done a bunch of comics. I liked it, but since I've already read it digitally, I don't feel the need to buy it again. And then I think that was it that I had for regular DC books. They are doing a lot of first issues, but I am waiting to read those as they show up on the DC Universe app. And one other thing, I'm starting to buy Mad Magazine every time it comes out, because every issue now is all reprint, but it's all themed reprints. So I want to get to the theme that they have for this month.
Godzilla versus King Kong.
So it's all monsters.
Yep.
Yep, it's Gagzilla versus King Kong ball filled with more gags you can shake up Fay Ray at. It's a mantra smackdown salute to Godzilla and King Kong. One of the things about King Kong, William Gaines, who was the publisher of Mad forever, huge King Kong fan. And it was said that if you were having trouble getting into Mad, if you're one of the regular Mad contributors, but you're having trouble getting into an issue, do a King Kong joke and Gaines will accept it. So it does have the original King Kong parody from '76. Godzilla parodies, Mighty Joe Young parody. Let's see. It looks like they say it's not the original cover, but they do have a cover by Jack Davis, which would be cool if they went ahead with that. And I just want to point out that, by the way, Joe, whose birthday was Saturday? Do you know whose birthday was Saturday?
Might have been mine. I wasn't really paying attention much.
No, it was Al Jaffe turned 100.
Jeez.
And he recently retired from Mad. Yeah. They have a new fold-in artist now.
He's thinking he might come back, make a strong comeback when he hits 101.
And now we get to their trade paperbacks and hardcovers.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what you think of the Fourth World by John Byrne omnibus hardcover.
I didn't care for his Fourth World stories when they came out. I remember when he left and Walt Simonson came on, it was like, oh, Walt Simonson's so good at this that I kind of forgot the John Byrne stuff. This was at the point where John Byrne would just ignore stuff that he didn't like. So he basically ignored everything from the New Gods number 11 in the 70s till now. It does have his summer crossover that spun out of New Gods, Genesis. Joe, what was the plot of Genesis? And you can tell by that silence, Joe doesn't remember because it wasn't very good.
Yeah, other than John Byrne doing it. I mean, the art,
Yeah.
I vaguely remember reading this just because John Byrne was doing it. But other than that, I think I would settle to read it online. There's got to be a paperback somewhere of this.
Yeah, there were paperbacks of it.
Yeah.
Let's see. However, the Bronze Age Justice League Omnibus is one I want to pick up. I picked up the one before this because the one before this was the Len Wein run and then the Steve Englehart run. And I had read the Steve Englehart run, which was very Marvel-esque. I'd never read the Len Wein run. This is when Gary Conway came back and took over. And George Perez came on the art. No, wait, this is right before Perez do the art. But this was when Gary Conway came back from being editor-in-chief at Marvel for a weekend. And I have not read these stories. They've never been collected anywhere. So I'm kind of interested in them in that I do like Gary Conway's Justice League when he's got the main 7 characters. So I am going to pick this one up. These are stories that have never been reprinted anywhere. Let's see if there was anything else that jumped out at me. Oh, the Tales from the DC Dark Multiverse 2. I like the Dark Multiverse in that these are kind of what-if stories for big events that happen in DC. And it's much like the way What If was its last couple of years in the 80s before it got canceled, in that everything goes horribly, horribly wrong. This does Hush, Flashpoint, Wonder Woman: War of the Gods, and Crisis on Infinite Earths.
I'm still trying to get someone to explain to me this whole dark metal stuff.
I tell you what happened afterward.
Everybody declines. Nobody wants to do it.
Because nobody quite understood what happened. I just know that at the end of it, the 52 multiverses are gone, and now it's an infinite number of multiverses.
Why?
So Crisis on Infinite Earths has now been completely undone.
Why did Daniel get involved from Sandman?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. That was what got me interested in the first place.
But once again, not a lot from DC on their collected editions.
I do have that one shot they did this month. I'll probably read it and maybe we can talk about it next week. See if that draws my interest into anything else. Because right now I'm pretty much I look at the creators and or if it's something I haven't collected before, like Transmetropolitan, I've never read it, so I'm looking forward to getting that. But again, if you're reading something out of DC that's got you going, we'd love to hear from you. Either we'll just tell you later how to get a hold of us. IDW, page 121. I said I was going to buy it. We talked about it when it came out, and now that it's in a collector edition, I'm going to pick this bad boy up. The Comic Book History of Animation. Fred Van Lente wrote it, and it's basically
Ryan Dunleavy drew it, who also drew his other books like Comic Book History of Comics, and a book that I told your sister she ought to get, and at first she was like, yeah, whatever. Then I guess she looked at it, went, oh my God, this is great. Action Philosophers.
Yeah. So this one, of course, the history of animation, true tune tales of the most iconic characters, artists, and styles. And it's certified cool, so you got to pick it up. But
you mean you're not going to be picking up? Let's see. It's Snake Eyes Dead Game.
I don't play dice games.
It's a G.I. Joe comic about Snake Eyes by Rob Liefeld. 144 pages.
I thought I would pick up on page 125, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, volume. Oh, I should have paid attention. 4, The Tempest. See, those Roman numerals almost got me. It's the story to end all stories. 2 decades of literacy league lunacy has all been building to this, the most ambitious mega comic imaginable. I told you, Cory, we keep an eye on that young guy, Alan Moore. He's going to make something of himself one of these days, and here's his chance to prove it, along with artist Kevin O'Neill.
The man the Comics Code says his art is too creepy to approve.
It's good enough for me. So, is this it?
Yes, this is the last comic Alan Moore will do. He has signed a contract to do novels for a publishing company in London, in Europe, England.
Cool.
And he will be devoting himself just to novels now.
I always hedge myself as like, is there going to be an omnibus on all this stuff? Because it's been collected across so many different companies.
That's the thing. 3 and 4 are available through Top Shelf. 1 and 2 were with America's Best Comics, and DC is never, ever, 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 ever given up the rights to publish an Alan Moore book.
Yeah.
So, you're never going to get one that has the whole thing.
Well, then again, we got JLA Avengers eventually, so maybe. Yeah, I know.
Again, don't hold your breath.
It slipped right out of my fingers. That's it for me for IDW.
Next is Marvel.
Marvel. Wait a minute. Where's my Marvel? There it is. And Marvel, of course, has its own supplement. And let's see. Where do I go? Well, let's start. The cover is Heroes Reborn. Cory, are you buying Heroes Reborn?
Yes.
Are you going to buy it in comic format or waiting for the inevitable graphic novel?
Oh, I'm buying it as a book, of course.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'll end up doing.
The story is, this is a world where the Avengers never existed. And when I hear Heroes Reborn and its 25th anniversary, I kind of roll my eyes until I saw Jason Aaron and Ed McGuinness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to wait for the omnibus because, it's a 7-issue series. They're putting out an issue a week of the main book. But then there are tie-ins to show other heroes in this world, such as Magneto and the Mutant Force, Siege Society, Young Squadron, Peter Parker,
the Amazing Shutterbug,
Hyperion and the Imperial Guard, I like when Marvel does these things as long as they're self-contained, and I also like the fact that they're going to, rather than stretch it out over 7, 8 months. Nope, one a week. Boom, boom, boom.
Yep. As the only other thing I'm getting is on page 38, Thanos Quest, Marvel Tales #1, because written by Jim Starlin, penciled by Ron Lim. So you got Thanos, Starlin, Lim. Take my money.
Joe, do you know what this book is?
I don't care. You got Jim Starlin, you got Ron Lim, you got Thanos.
It is a reprint of the 2-part Thanos Quest story that came out in the super expensive
that's for the time.
prestige format. $4.99 each. Well, now you can pick up the whole thing for, what is it, $7.99?
$7.99.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a good story.
So it's actually cheaper than buying the originals when they came out.
I have no idea what they're priced now. I know for a while they went up to like $20.
And you know they're in the the Infinity Gauntlet omnibus, but this is basically the story that sets the stage for the Infinity Gauntlet.
Yep.
It's Thanos' quest to get all of the Infinity Gems.
After that, there's nothing, and I really mean nothing this month that I look like I'm going to pick up, because I think there's stuff I'm getting already, or it's like the Thor by Jason Aaron Volume 3, because I'm picking up the other ones. A lot of omnibuy and some new printings on some stuff, but nothing that I'm looking to pick up. A few tempting things, like on page 94, there was The Death of Captain Marvel Gallery Edition, which not only has the graphic novel, but a bunch of other stuff tying into it.
Comic-wise, I did want to point out a story that's going to be part of the all the Star Wars books, and that is War of the Bounty Hunters. This tells the story of Boba Fett taking Han Solo to Tatooine, and all of the bounty hunters trying to stop him and take Han Solo so they could get the bounty from Jabba the Hutt. And it's going to have its own alpha issue, and then it will be in Bounty Hunters, Star Wars Bounty Hunters, the regular Star Wars comic, the Darth Vader comic, and the Dr. Aphra comic. And I got my Dr. Aphra omnibus. And Joe, you know a little more about Star Wars toys and stuff than me. Has there ever been a character from outside the movies that has been as successful as Dr. Aphra?
Yeah, Jax the Rabbit.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
still waiting on that
action figure. Yeah. I mean, I get tired of, spray painting my sister's old Bugs Bunny, green so I can have a plaything with it. I don't think so. Matter of fact, I was even going to say this event must now supersede Shadow of the Empire, which was kind of
Shadow of the Empire never happened.
Yeah, not canon anymore. So throw out your toys, rip up your comics, dump the video game just like they did those old ET things into the garbage chute. It just didn't happen.
And, in 20 years, when they want to do this story again, they'll redo it.
Yep.
And now we get to all the Marvel hardcovers and trade paperbacks that are going to force me to sell some plasma.
Yeah.
Jeez, what a month.
You need to kick this habit. I swear there's a sinkhole forming under your compound there where all the graphic. I mean, granted, you're not going to get blown away by the inevitable tornadoes coming, which, by the way, we haven't even bitched about, because as Cory and I are doing this podcast, there's a snowstorm rumbling outside.
And
I'm sure our listeners.
This morning, I had thunder snow.
And what happened, as soon as I saw you said that, I went online and I looked and I go, oh, look, the snow is forming a nice circle around the Twin Cities because we have that heat island. So it really didn't start coming down here till about 2, we got a little bit of ice, a little bit of snow, and then finally when it rumbled over us, this is the northern edge of the snow, which buried Denver and sent nasty weather into the southern states. We're going to get a snowstorm. The best part about it, by the time we talk next week, all of our snow will be melted.
By the time I get this mixed later in the week, it'll be gone.
Yeah. It's just one of those days. So, but us Minnesotans, we just can't. We got to stop every so often talk about the weather.
Well, and thunder snow is one of the most awesome things in the world. That's when you get a snowstorm with thunder and lightning.
Yeah.
Which is pretty rare.
Now, before Cory gets too far into his budget busting scenario, I'm going to go all the way to the back page because they're soliciting for that Mighty Marvel Masterworks that we had talked about, where they're doing trade paperback versions of the Masterworks in a smaller format, not paperback format like how I originally read all the Spider-Man stories way back in the 70s into the 80s. These are slightly bigger.
No, smaller. They're 6 by 9.
No, slightly bigger than the paperback, but smaller than your regular Masterworks. But they're priced $15.99. It's 6 by 9, and I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm going to do this or if I'm just going to wait and just do the Epic Collection when I get around to it. I suspect I'll do the Epic Collection because I have no idea, no faith how long this will last. But if you got somebody who's never read these stories, give them a shot. I know my kids enjoyed reading my Essential Collections when I had them. I can't help but think in color it might be a little more interesting because these are the classic Stan Lee, Steve Ditko ones. And this is Spider-Man 1 through 10 and the failed series Amazing Fantasy 15. I got an omnibus of it somewhere, but it can't be any good if it only went 15 issues.
So the page 89, we start with my budget busting. Fantastic Four Omnibus Volume 4, which ends the Kirby run. And if I have my numbers right, ends the Stan Lee run on the Fantastic Four. I'm going to double check, I think, because it goes to Fantastic Four 125. Fantastic Four. And I think 126 is when Roy Thomas took over. Yes, 126 was a retelling of the origin when Roy Thomas took over. Roy Thomas took over, retold the origin. They don't do it as much now because it's so much easier to get the origin stories. But what Marvel used to do is when a new creator took over, usually they would kind of do a retelling of the origin story as kind of here's where I'm starting from, and I'm going to go forward from there. So this wraps Stan Lee's run. Kirby does from 94 to 106 and then 108. 107 was the Fantastic Four, The Lost Adventure. And they reprint Fantastic Four, The Lost Adventure, which was that Kirby story that they then cut up and turned into a story where Romita and John Buscema redrew a lot of it. But the Lost Adventure is the original story Kirby did, and Eric Larson kind of corrected things back to Kirby's original. Then it has John Romita and John Buscema take over after that. On the next page, Cold the Destroyer, the original Marvel years. Now you're thinking, didn't they just do a Cold the Destroyer omnibus? Yes, they did, but this is for the color comics, and the other Cold the Destroyer was for the black and white magazine stuff. So this is the color comics. Let's see here. Cold the Conqueror 1 through 10, Cold the Destroyer 1 through 29. These stories from Creatures on the Loose and Monsters on the Prowl. And then some stuff from Conan when he crossed over with Conan, and some backup stuff from the Savage Sword of Conan. On the next page, Conan the Barbarian, the original Marvel years. Now, they make a big deal about how Spider-Man gets to Volume 5. Conan the Barbarian, their omnibus is already at number 6, which is Michael Fleischer wrote most of this. but you did have art by John Buscema, Val Merrick, Ernie Chan, Bob Hall. This is Conan the Barbarian 150 through 171, as well as annual number 8 and 9, and What If 43, which was Thor versus Conan. Then, Amazing Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 5. This is basically after Stan had left. And it gets into, I believe it goes all the way up to when Joe started reading it, because it's Spider-Man 143 through 180.
Yep, very tempting to pick this baby up.
And Joe, take a look at the smaller cover on page 93.
Okay. Oh,
now,
yeah.
You've seen that cover a few thousand times, because I remember in the 70s, that was the one that they had on the Trapper Keeper and the Mead folders and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that was drawn by Gil Kane? Because
No.
when I look at it, it's like, that's not Gil Kane art.
No, I don't.
And somebody
I don't
mentioned it,
that.
and what it is, somebody finally found Kane sketched the cover, but Romita's the one who finished it, and that's why when you look at it, you see no trace of Gil Kane on that cover. That's all John Romita. It's because Gil Kane's cover was just basically a really quick sketch that he did, and Romita finished it. So for the longest time, I was like, why the hell did they say that was drawn by Gil Kane? You already mentioned the death of Captain Marvel. Charles Soule, who took over Daredevil after Mark Waid and did a run of about, let's see, how many issues did he do? He did about 35, 40 issues. His Daredevil run is getting an omnibus.
You get an omnibus, and you get an omnibus, and you get an omnibus.
They're also reprinting the Amazing Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 3, the Alias Omnibus. Now, remember we talked about how the Max line is pretty much dead unless Garth Ennis comes back and wants to do a Punisher story?
Yeah.
Jessica Jones was the first Max comic. Nowhere in the solicitation does it mention it's part of the Marvel Max line.
Oh, they minimize the maximizing.
Yes. The McFarlane Omnibus is being reprinted again. This is not the stuff that he did on Amazing Spider-Man. This is stuff he did when he got his own book. So,
fun.
And I believe that is it for the omnibuses. And you
Well,
look
there's
at
an
that and you go,
Inferno
wow, that's a lot of
prologue.
omnibuses. Yeah, Marvel's
Well,
going to be
no.
pulling a lot of money this summer.
Inferno Prologue Omnibus on page 101.
Oh, God, that's right. They're
That's a
reprinting that.
new printing on that, yeah. This is
And-
the prologue, not the main event.
And from what I hear, this is the most requested reprint, omnibus reprint Marvel received. Because Marvel ran a poll with retailers saying, what omnibus would you like us to reprint? This came in at number 1. And I didn't like this story, so
Yeah,
sorry.
Sorry.
Peter Parker gets a Marvel Masterwork. This is the Roger Stern stuff. So if you want to see where the character who would become Hobgoblin came from, that's where you want to read. One that I am super excited about. They are reprinting the Captain America's Bicentennial Battles, which was a Treasury edition. All new Treasury edition, 100 pages. They are reprinting it as well as the calendar for that year that Kirby did all the art for. In the Marvel Treasury size. So this will be at the original size on the much nicer paper. This is the one where I will point to and go, you see this? This is where Jack Kirby was inked by Barry Windsor Smith, and this is the best stuff I ever saw in my life. Kirby inked by Barry Windsor Smith is unbelievably beautiful. May need a drool cup. And I'm wondering if there was anything else that jumped out at me other than the epics. Everything else is just reprinting the normal stuff. Dawn of X Volume 16, they are still reprinting the X-Men in these trade paperbacks. Every month or so, I get 1 or 2 of these. It is the best way to read the X-Men books, by far. And I hope it continues until Hickman's story is over. Oh, Loki, Agent of Asgard, because the Loki TV series will be coming out this summer. They're reprinting that series, which was by Al Ewing and Jason Aaron, which tied into Jason Aaron's Thor story. Epic Collections are mostly reprints, except for Generation X is getting an Epic Collection. This was the 90s kind of reboot of the New Mutants, where they created new characters. These are the new students in the X-Men. The reason to pick this book up is art by Joe Madura, Andy Kubert, Chris Bacalo, Tom Grummett. Chris Bacalo's art in this was so goddamn good. And, Joe Madura, his stuff is really good too. He may even come back and draw a cover or two over the next few years, because he announced he's bringing back Battle Chasers. He's not writing or drawing it, but
he's bringing it back.
And I think, yep, all the other Epic collections are, well, no, the Punisher Epic collection is a new one. And it reprints, Punisher 26 to 34, and then a whole bunch of the Punisher graphic novels that came out when Punisher was red hot.
Super hot.
And that was it for me. Isn't that enough?
That always is. You would think with the read-off we do of Marvel's graphic novel that they were paying us to do this. But they're not.
But no, Uncanny Omar over at Near Mint, not only are they sponsoring him, but he's the one who has all the announcements. So if you ever want to know what omnibuses are coming about a month before Marvel puts out a solicitation, go over to the YouTube and subscribe to Near Mint, the Uncanny Omar, who whenever he's wearing his suit in the video, he's announcing a new omnibus, which I find fun. Next up is Dynamite, or as I like to call it, Red Sonja Vampirella.
Yeah. And I'm actually thinking of picking one up. They have the Invincible Red Sonja. Writer Jim Palmiotti with Amanda Connor. And artist is Moritat. And I'm just... there's one or two things I'm going to do. Either I've enjoyed when... Jimmy and Amanda write stuff together, so I'd give it a shot, or I'm just going to buy it for the Frank Cho cover and leave it at that. So either one, I figure I'm winning, because if I enjoy it, it's a good series, and we'll talk about it when I read it. If not, I got a funny Frank Cho cover. The only other interesting thing, if you are into Red Sonja, on page 173, more Red Sonja goodness. Not only the Frank Thorne statue, and again, this all came out before he passed away. They're offering it again because it's 45th anniversary of Red Sonja. There's a limited edition challenge coin, which their coins have been kind of cool. I've been collecting them off and on. The 2 pint glass set underneath that, and then enamel pins. These would be the things that when I ran, maybe either Hot Comics or Crazy Comics, I would pick up just because. Well, first of all, the statue looks cool. And second of all, a lot of shops don't pick this stuff up. So you'd walk in and see that I had them and know that I was cooler than everybody else. Nanny, nanny, boo, boo.
And I don't know if it's still the same now, but I know that so few shops would get statues. If you became known for the guy who gets statues, the statue collectors would be there. They knew the day stuff was coming out. Yeah. And they would be there either that Wednesday or that Friday, knowing that you get the statues. And statue collectors there aren't many of them, but when they're dropping $200, $300, $400, $500 bucks a pop, it's good to make them your friend.
Yeah.
If you're a shop owner. Next off is Boom.
Boom, chug-a-lug. I have nothing new from Boom. Sorry, Boom.
Yeah, nothing new either. Well, they don't have any new series starting up this month either.
No, they're cranking up some of the older stuff we've talked about in the past. And now...
Well, I didn't look at what Image is pushing. Spring into Action. The trade paperbacks they're pushing are a bunch of self-contained stuff, it looks like. Mage, volumes 1, 2, and 3. Let's see, Cemetery Beach, Battle Chasers, We Stand on Guard, Tokyo Ghost 1 and 2. So it's a lot of self-contained trade paperbacks that they're pushing. If you look at the page, it's usually on this, it's page 60 and 61. Usually the retailer gets a bit of a break on those, so they might be able to cut you a break as well.
And
Also
if
in
you're into
previews,
the Women in Comics page.
Yes, that's what I was going to point out.
202, 203. I'm just looking at some stuff, let's see, that I've read. Unsacred, I've read. Buffy the Vampire Slayer from Boom.
Womanthology, I've read all the Womanthology books. I actually got those from the Kickstarter. They were kind of the first comic Kickstarter, by the way. And they did at least 2 volumes. I think they did 3, because I know I have one called Space.
What's nice about this,
science fiction stories.
They have the star codes and the other codes you need in order to order these directly from your comic store, because a lot of this stuff's in print already. So just take that code. If your shop doesn't have it, give it to your friendly neighborhood comic store owner, and they will order it for you. And if they don't, give Cory and me a call. We know plenty of guys who will.
Let's see. So, another thing is, in this month's previews, they have special markers for comics that are created by women. So, you'll see a lot of that as you go through previews. Let's see. I believe I had another of these movie books about movies that never got made. Page 207. Underexposed, the 50 greatest movies never made. These are movies that got stuck in development hell, such as Stanley Kubrick's Lord of the Rings, starring the Beatles. Steven Spielberg's planned Old Boy adaptation, starring Will Smith, and other movies that never got made. One of the things I find fascinating when I read old fanzines are movies that these fanzines say are definitely coming out that never ever saw the light of day. I think the most famous one is the Silver Surfer movie, which Marvel pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. That was going to be based on the Stan Lee Jack Kirby graphic novel and was going to be a musical. And they even had test footage. They had created a Silver Surfer surfboard effect. And Jim Shooter went around to conventions with that test footage. And then I think it was like 1979, 1980, 81. By 82, it was like it never existed and was never spoken of again. But I think, Joe, you're the one who told me Paul McCartney was working on the songs for that movie until it all fell apart.
Yep.
So I find stuff like that just fascinating, of movies that fall apart. I think one of my favorite documentaries is about Terry Gilliam's Man of La Mancha, where he had been trying for years to make the movie about Don Quixote. And they actually started filming, and 2 days later, this horrible storm came and destroyed the sets, and they didn't have the money to rebuild them.
Even the gods were against it.
It finally did get made. So, and it did exactly what the backers of the movie thought. It came out, and because it's Terry Gilliam, it played to the art houses and was gone and made no money.
But it got made.
Yeah, but it got made, and you can still watch it, and it is beautiful. So, Joe, what jumped out at you first?
Page 214 in Aftershock. They're calling it a one shock because it's a horror. I'm not big on horror comics, but this one kind of caught my attention. First of all, it's done in one. Second of all, it's called Eden. Tattoo artist Niles lives his life in kind of a daze. Minute after minute, he muddles through the repetitive moments of his job, his life, his guilt. All that changes when Eden walks through the door of the tattoo shop. She's looking for something different, and she finds it with Niles. But Eden is a woman surrounded by deep mysteries. Not the least of which is how and why her new tattoos vanish after only a few days. As Niles learns more about Eden, he is driven to a fathomless depths of both love and horror. So I figured I'd give this a quick peek. Considering it's a one-shot, couple nice covers. There's an incentive cover both covers look real intriguing, but generally the incentive covers will price out a little bit more. So I will probably recommend just the original one. What do you got next?
Well, one I want to point out just because I find it hilarious. Remember how earlier in the year I talked about the books that had fallen into public domain, one of which was The Great Gatsby?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Page
yeah.
258, the all-new comic book adaptation of The Great Gatsby.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too, because I actually heard some press on this one where people are like, oh, do we need another one? And they're like, this one looks pretty good. Obviously.
Well, there's never been a comic adaptation. There were movie adaptations.
Oh, maybe that's how I read that wrong.
But this is the first comic adaptation. I just find it pretty neat that comics will descend on public domain stuff.
Like Oprah on a canned ham. Oh,
like
thank you. I had to use it finally.
Like comic fans on a free breakfast buffet.
Or comic retailer picking up complimentary pens.
So there you go. Didn't take more than 3 months before somebody, hey, it's public domain, we're going to do it. Does
this say whether or not it's done in one, or is it going to be?
No, it is a, let's see, it is, doesn't say how many issues it will be, but it will be a few issues.
Yeah.
Because it's only 28 pages.
Yeah, and there's a gold foil cover. Gold! Or a regular blank sketch cover. I wonder what kind of art I could get on that. Anyways, yeah, that was one I was going to point out. I don't know if I'm going to buy it. I've read the book. The book is fun. I've seen the movie. I would rather give my attention if I could flip without cutting my fingers up. Ooh, ow, 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 ooh. Page 244. Marjorie Finnegan, Temporal Criminal #1. I looked at the cover. I thought about it. I was about to pass it, and then 2 words caught my eye. Cory, what were those 2 words?
What's the page number again?
244.
Temporal Criminal. Well, usually, if it has to do with time travel, you're in.
Yeah, time travel I'm usually in. But I almost passed this. But then I went back because 2 words caught my eye.
Oh, written by Garth Ennis.
Bingo. I figured, what the heck? In for 8 issues. I'll give it a shot, and I'll read it when it comes out, let you know what I think. But Marjorie Finnegan, she's a temporal criminal. What more do you need to know? Oh, all right then. All Marge wants to do is race up and down the time lanes, stealing everything shiny, gleamy, pretty, sparkly she can lay her hands on. But her larcenous trail from the Big Bang to the 95th Reich is drawn the beady eye of temporal police detective whose #1 deputy marshal is now hard on her trail, taking things extremely personally. Worse still, Marge's worthless creep of an ex and his even scummier partner have seen an angle of their own in all this and now intend to use her time tech to change history for their own benefits. Marge's only ally, a guy called Tim, and he's just a head. I mean, come on, what use is just a head? So, okay, you got me, Garth. You got me, Gordon. You got me, Muriel Salov. You got me, Andy. I don't know which cover I'm going for. The variant cover by Deodato Jr. It looks tempting. Frank Cho is doing a cover, and of course the regular cover looks good. So I'll let you know what I decide when I finally place my order. But yeah, I'm in for all 8 on this one. How about you, Cory? What you got coming up the road?
Page 291. Last Gasp, who is best known for all of their underground comics, is putting out a new book, Slow Death Zero. Slow Death was the horror underground that they did. and like all undergrounds, it came out infrequently. But it's best known for Roger Corman stories. This is a new softcover trade paperback, and it has art by William Stout, Brian Talbot, and Richard freaking Corbin. And I don't know if this was written before or after he passed, but it's probably going to be your last Richard Corbin story. Let's see. It also has Rick Veitch, Peter Bagg, Drew Friedman, Daniel Hellman, Peter Cooper, Bob Fingerman, Mike Diana, and Kelly Storm. Mike Diana is the one man in the U.S. who is legally prohibited from drawing comics. Shall I tell that story, Joe?
It's a pretty light previews because I've only really got like 3 more things to talk about, and then I'm done. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Mike Diana was a guy who did what they called ground level comics, because the undergrounds were dead by the time he started doing comics. And he would draw these really disturbing comics, horror, sex, breaking all sorts of boundaries. And his stuff was in a comic shop in Chicago, shop called Friendly Frank's. And some police officer came in, bought a bunch of the books, then left, then came back in and arrested the man who owned the shop for selling pornography. And this is kind of what caused the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund to come into being. But one of the books he bought was a Mike Diana book, and Mike Diana was actually arrested for drawing the comic. It went up. Basically, he would get convicted. They would appeal. It went all the way up after a judge said that not only could these books not be sold, he was legally not allowed to draw comics anymore because they were so disturbing and dealt with things that he felt simply should not be in books. It has gone up, but it was the comic Boiled Angel. There is now a documentary about it. And if you read his stuff, it's way, way, way out there and super disturbing. But should he be legally stopped from creating art? Finally, the courts have ruled no. But there for a while, it literally was, he was sentenced to never draw anything. How they could enforce that, I have no idea. Probably if he ever tried to sell anything. But very famous court case in the late 80s, early 90s about censorship. And he will be doing something in Slow Death Zero. Slow Death was a really disturbing horror comic that dealt with very serious subjects. So this is not zombies. This is cancer and disease and other things like that. It's also very well done. I'm picking it up for the Corbin stuff and also for the Bob Fingerman and the Peter Bagg stuff. But undergrounds aren't dead. They're slow death. Joe, what do you have next?
By the way, if you got $100, you can get the Boiled Angel Fanzines entire collection box. There's 2 of them on the eBays, and it's got everything in there. So if you really want to see it,
you can also go to his website and buy it.
Yeah. Either way. Let's see. I will point out on page 233, Archie and Friends Superheroes #1. It's only $2.99.
Yeah, it's only 24 pages, though.
I know, but it's a return of pure art. More impressive, on page 328, I'll get you some flipping some pages. For a mere $1, you can try V.E. Schwab's Extraordinary Number 0, one of Adult Entertainment Weekly's female authors who rules sci-fi and fantasies. Entertainment Weekly being the magazine. It's set in the years between 2 of her critically acclaimed novels, Vicious and Vengeful, and it's a 4-part comic series. This $1 preview leads into the series, and this is your chance to try it for a mere $1. And I'm all about it. If you're going to give me something for $1 or less, I will give it a shot. And since we don't have any true believers or image shots or anything else to push, I'm pointing this out. Give it a shot. See if it's what you want. It's Published Weekly says it's rare superhero novel as epic and gripping as any classic comic. And it's about Carol Tills, a headstrong young girl, sucked into a world she doesn't fully understand when a near-death experience gives her a power to see a person's death before it occurs. And then there's L.I. Ever, who's a young man with the power of regeneration. Though he's actually 35, he hasn't aged a day since he was 22. He considers himself to be a bit of an avenging angel figure. So I'll give that a shot, and I hope there's enough time between the 0 and the 1 for me to read it, because I'm not inclined to buy the number 1 until I try the 0. So we'll see how that works. And looking over my notes, that's it on the comic side of things. Cory, what else do you got that might interest our listeners?
Page 298 is a new Marvel novel, Gamora and Nebula. It's a softcover novel, $17.99, written by Mackenzie Lee. And it is one of the Marvel novels. It'll tie in more to the movies than the comics, but they do try to make it to where it doesn't counteract anything that's in the comics. I like Marvel novels. I always have. Way back when I started reading comics, they started doing the Marvel novels, the first few by Len Wein and Marv Wolfman, and then, guys who, I think, didn't they have, Tony Isabella did one. But then, they faded away, and then they started novels again in the 90s, and then the person who was packaging those, Brian Price, he passed away, so Marvel's now doing their own novels. Some are adaptations, and some are brand new. I like them. I like tie-in novels because I'm not a snob about novels. A Marvel novel's one, okay, I already know the characters, just give me a good adventure. On page 299 is a book being resolicited. This is from New York Review, Trots and Bonnie, which was the comic strip by Sherry Flanagan in National Lampoon about a girl who's somewhere between 12 and 14 and her dog. Kind of fantasy, but kind of not. With stories about Sherry Flanagan's past or things that girls dealt with that aren't talked about a lot. If you read these in National Lampoon, you know what I'm talking about. These are wonderful comic strips. They've never been reprinted before. They announced this about a year ago, and then it was pulled from the schedule. It's now been put back on the schedule. And this and Nuts, Gahan Wilson's Nuts, were two of the best comic strips National Lampoon printed. Nuts was about little kids, but it dealt with the things that little kids actually fear: strangers, death, new things. I think they did a reprinting of Nuts years and years ago, but I wish they would put that back out because I can't afford to buy the old version. Gahan Wilson's stuff was fantastic as well, but Sherry Flanagan, this stuff has not been in print for 20, 30 years. I'm flipping through to get to the next thing that I have dog-eared the cover of, and that is the stuff from Tomorrow's Alter Ego 170. It had finally happened. They are showcasing Jack Kirby, which surprised me that Alter Ego, it focuses on Golden and Silver Age, has never done a special Jack Kirby issue, and part of it is because there's Jack Kirby Collector, but Roy Thomas has found some articles that fit more into what he's doing, such as Will Murray talking about Jack Kirby's contribution to the creator of Iron Man. The Fawcett Collector section will be about Jack Kirby and Joe Simon working on the original Captain Marvel. And Kirby in 60s fanzines. And also an article, Roy Thomas on being a Kirby fan and occasional foil. For all the talk of when Kirby went over to DC and did Funky Flashman, which was a kind of mean version of Stan Lee, that Stan just kind of went, whatever. I think the parody he did of Roy Thomas as House Roy was much meaner. And Roy Thomas just kind of shrugs it off and says, Jack must not have known me very well. Which, kudos to Roy Thomas for the fact that here's this guy who savaged him in a comic, and Roy doesn't just shrug it off. When Jack came back to Marvel, Roy pushed really hard for Jack to work on other books and do covers and stuff. Now, there was a time when he contacted Jack and said, come on, let's work on the Fantastic Four together. Roy said that he would be writing up plots for Kirby, and Kirby only wanted to do his own stuff. Kirby said that Roy told him was, we'll do it like Stan did. I'll give you an idea and you draw it out. And Kirby had left Marvel because of that. Which story is true? Probably somewhere in the middle. Back issue is also a new issue. It's about Bronze Age TV tie-ins. So it's the kind of stuff Joe likes, because most of these had photo covers, such as The Bionic Woman, Dark Shadows, Emergency, HR Pup and stuff. Hee Haw. Joe, did you know there was a Hee Haw comic?
I did. Sadly, though, Bionic Woman and Hee Haw didn't have photo covers.
Did you know who published the Hee Haw comic?
Carlton, I believe.
Yes, they did. And I've seen a few issues, and it is awful.
Yes.
Lost in Space, Sledgehammer.
Sledgehammer. Good Lord.
Superboy. Who published Sledgehammer, Joe?
Marvel did.
Yes, they did.
I believe the second issue had a Amazing Spider-Man cameo.
Yes, it did. So that's what's coming out from tomorrow's. They're also reprinting the Jack Kirby Centennial Checklist, which lists every story Jack Kirby did. So if you ever want to be a completist, this is a book that has everything listed. It's $34.95. All of Kirby's published comic book work with dates, story titles, page counts, anchors, and reprints cross-reference to help collectors locate less expensive versions of key issues, including pulp magazines, books, foreign editions, newspaper strips, fine arts, collages, periodicals, fanzines, convention booklets, novels, and short stories. Essays, interviews, speeches, panels, everything Kirby ever did is in that book.
You lucky guys.
I bought it a while back, and it's
great. Yeah, I kind of figured.
Everything you ever want to know is in this book.
Flip your previews over, go to page 34, because there's something there that if you might even want to buy. And Lord knows, back in the comic shop, I wish I had.
The Pac-Man award?
No, that's page 34. No, 34 is the page I want you on.
Okay.
Although the Pac-Man award's pretty cool. Expensive, but cool.
The Legends of Lucha Libre premium accessory, which is a table that breaks apart.
Abso-friggin-lutely. And then underneath it, you have a bunch of chairs.
Yes. That also dent and break.
Standing. Yes, if you have any action figures and you play with them the way I do, this would be my late birthday, next Christmas, or Pi Day gift for me. Cory wants big, expensive omnibuses. I want a toy breakaway chair. That's it for me for previews, people.
Oh, I thought it would be the Masters of the Universe Origins set.
No, although I was looking at the Masters of the Universe WWE mashups that are selling out at Walmarts all over town.
There was a toy on page 38 that I am waffling on.
Uh-oh.
And if there weren't so many goddamn omnibuses.
I got to pick up my previews now after I ceremoniously did a previews drop. Page 38, you say?
Yes. What do you think it would be, Joe?
Let's see. Street Fighter Chun-Li bobblehead, no. Sonic Hedgehog articulated, maybe. Lord of the Rings, definitely not. Sam and Max Wave 1 figures.
Yes!
Oh, sweet!
I love
Nice.
Sam and Max.
Yeah, those are pretty cool. How about, Cory, I got something even you might be interested in. It's from Kamiko and Mind Game. It was produced with painstaking detail in the highest quality materials, and you can get it not only in regular version for $34.95, but a limited edition signed for $99.95 and $3 mask for shipping and handling. And you only have to send a check or money order, no CODs, please, to Mind Game, 69 Quint Avenue, Suite 200, Alliston, MA 02134. Copyright 1989. Kimiko helped make it. What do you think that might be?
I do not know.
Matt Wagner had something to do with it.
Yeah. Was that the Kamiko 5th anniversary book?
No, this is something I could see you possibly wearing in public, especially with the pandemic.
Oh, the Grendel mask. I already have
Very good, very good.
I have two, actually.
Oh, whoa. One of our listeners, Travis, sent me an email, said, oh, you got to ask Cory if he knows what this is. So, Cory, not only do you get a dime for guessing, but you get an extra dime for having one.
I have two. One that I had in the comic area, and then one that I have as a wall decoration.
Cool. How could I not have seen that? I must not have looked on the wall close enough. Did you go for the limited edition mask that signed and numbered by Matt himself for a mere
No,
$100?
I did not, because I bought them at your store.
Yeah. Cool beans. How could I not remember having those?
You know what else is cool, Joe?
eBay sending me my payout finally. Woohoo! I can have McDonald's.
AZ
$7.
Power Girl, Karen Nicole's new photos? No. It's these guys, our sponsors. Believe it or not, kids, this here podcast has sponsors. And that sponsor, since day one, is DreamHost.com. DreamHost.com is the best, bar none, web host in the whole known universe. And if you need a website, head on over to DreamHost.com, put in code KRAYZ, that's KRAYZ, and get $20 off your first year. Now, if you would like to advertise here on any of the Solitaire Rose Network podcasts, you can. Just email me at solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com, subject advertising. Also, head on over to eBay and look for user Krayz, Krayz. That's Joe Crazy Writer, who's always telling us about the eBay in every episode of Crazy Comics and Stories. If you would like to contact us, you can do so. You can give us a call at 952-856-0519. Leave a message and we'll play it on the show. Or you can send us an email at solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com. Thanks. And if you think that I'm just a slacker because I only do one podcast a week, you're crazy because I do all of these. The Solitaire Rose Radio Network is currently on a pause, basically because COVID-19 has made it so that I have to work a lot of extra hours at both jobs. But you can still go and listen to my other podcasts. Now, you're probably listening to Crazy Comics and Stories, which is the main podcast. But on this same feed, KRAYZ, COMIX, is Solitaire Rose Radio, the solo radio podcast that I do. I've done interviews, I've done short stories, I've done all sorts of things, and you can get to it right here on this same feed. I also do a podcast called Novelcast, where I take the novels I've written and turn them into free audiobooks. That's over at novels.solitairerose.com. Dangerous Dan Moore and I, and of course Wolfie B. Bad, give you bad advice over at badadvice.solitairerose.com. You send in your questions and we give you the aforementioned bad advice. And then myself and Adam Vermillion from For the Love of Comics, do the Fantastic Forecast at fantasticforecast.solitairerose.com, where we go through the issues of the Fantastic Four, 4 issues at a time, to give the plot and commentary on each issue. That's not all. Yes, I'm crazy. I still, over at pwinsiderelite.com, every week on Wednesday, do a recap of the latest episode of AEW Dynamite. I write up what happened, and then myself and Anthony Pyrus will do an audio. Now, you can only listen to the audio if you're a member at pwinsiderelite.com, and if you're a wrestling fan, you should be, where we then break down the episode, talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, give it a grade, and let you know if you should have watched that episode. Those are the other podcasts here at the Solitaire Rose Radio Network. Thanks. And now we get to the most important part of the show.
It is.
Me going outside to play in the snow.
Good idea. Don't eat the yellow stuff, though.
No. It's Joe. What's going on the eBays?
eBay. It's an international, multinational e-commerce corporation based in America, out of San Jose, California. It facilitates consumer-to-consumer and business-to-consumer sales through its website. Founded by Pierre Omidyar in 1995, and it became one of the few notable success stories of the dot-com bubble. It started as Auction Web, September 3rd, 1995, by Pierre. It was part of a larger personal site. One of the first items sold on Auction Web was a broken laser pointer for $14.83. Astonished, Pierre contacted the winning bidder to ask if he understood that the laser pointer was broken. And the buyer explained, I'm a collector of broken laser pointers. And it became one of the first online auction sites allowing person-to-person transactions, and it boomed. I don't know when he renamed it eBay, but it was kind of a simple hobby for him until the internet provider told him you would need to upgrade to a business account due to his high website traffic. He increased, I guess the internet provider increased from $30 to $250, which prompted Omar to start charging eBay users who did not object. And then Chris Argopio was eBay's first additional employee to process mailed check payments. From there, I guess that the company changed its name from AuctionWeb to eBay September 1997 after Echo Bay Technology Group, consulting firm that Pierre owned. And then he got the domain name echobay.com, was already taken by a mining company, so he shortened it to ebay.com. After $6.7 million in funding from the venture capital Benchmark Capital, eBay just exploded. At first, I know people say there was a repeated story that eBay was founded to help Pierre's fiancée trade Pez candy dispensers. That was fabricated by the public relations manager, Mary Lou Song,
to give
a human interest story, a more appealing than he just perfected what he was doing already. It led to a lot of enormous publicity, led to an explosive growth among toy collectors. I think I got involved in 1998. I was selling comics like crazy then. One of the big things eBay sold really well were Beanie Babies, because they were the most difficult toy at the time to find in retail stores. They would sell out. Collectors internationally were trying to complete their collections. And so Ty set up its first business-to-consumer website, kind of a secondary online trading post, but it was overwhelmed. A more efficient online trading system was needed, and it became a dominant product on eBay, accounting for 10% of all their listings in 1997. And of course, eBay had a very user-friendly interface to help search for specific Beanie Babies that's still in line today. That's why a lot of times when you say, hey, what about Boiled Angel? Well, boom, I look right on eBay's and see it's there. eBay went public in 1998, and although one of the risk factors associated with the annual report, saying that eBay was dependent upon the continued strength of the Beanie Babies market. In the 2000s, the company eBay expanded product categories beyond to almost any saleable items, and business just exploded. In 2000, they had 12 million registered users with over 4.5 million items every day. 2001, they had the largest user base of any e-commerce site. I think Amazon's kind of outdid them, because I know for a while Amazon was just kind of struggling, but now I think more people buy things off Amazon than they do eBay. But eBay does have the buy it now option, which I think sometimes is a little more I don't know, what'd you say, gratifying, because you can buy it now and you don't have to wait to see if you win or get sniped or anything. But it's still going strong. The reason why I've kind of talked a bit about eBay is because this week in my eBay sales, I've pretty much sold things that we've already talked about in comics. I've sold Bob's Burgers, Baltimore Comic-Con. I've sold a copy of ARG. I've sold Witchblade, the movie comic edition, Power Girl, Ultra Force, Lady Death, Vengeance of Vampirella, as well as regular Vampirella, Secret Wars, Batman, Superman, X-Men, Utopia. The things we've talked about in the past. And it's kind of fun when we run across things that I haven't sold before. I sold a copy of Comic Book Legal Defense Fund Presents Liberty Comics. It was the Campbell variant cover that came out in 2008 from Image. And it also had an appearance with The Boys. And that between the Campbell cover and The Boys, that kind of drove the price up. Speaking of Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, I sold one of their variant covers from Doctor Strange and the Sorcerer Supreme. That was the miniseries where Doctor Strange got sucked into the past with all the Sorcerer Supremes, including a very young ancient one, who took a very dim view of Doctor Strange because he was not impressive. You're going to be the idiot that replaces me. Swords of Cerebus, Volume 4, first print, ended up selling. That was the reprint from 1982. So all sorts of fun things sold. The most interesting thing I sold, and I think I've talked about it before, I had a copy of Sophia Crumb's Evolution of a Crazy Artist, a limited signed hardcover, number 43 of 250, signed by Sophia, Robert, and I can't quite make out his wife's name, but all three of them signed it. And this was one of those books I was like, I enjoyed it. I liked it. It's not something I would go back to reread again. And although it's signed, and I love signed cover books, I hope the person who bought it for me likes it even more. As far as you, the valued listener, you know that anytime you buy something from me on the eBays, you have two things going for you. If you think I'm a little high priced, you got some nerve, fella. You can send me a note and say, hey, would you take this as an offer? And if you tell me you're a listener of the show, I'll more than likely say yes, or maybe I'll come back and say, I'm outraged that you asked this $100 comic for a mere $50. I demand you to accept a $40 counter offer, because, I'm running out of keys to the Strode compound. And now with all the snow, I don't want you to see Cory outside, all the tracks in yellow snow. It's very disturbing.
I'm home all the time, so it's harder for you to get in.
And if it melts, then you don't have to worry about knowing if Cory's there or not. I have, in the meantime, put up a lot of runs of stuff. Warlord of Mars. How do you say her name? Deja Thoris?
Deja Thoris.
Yeah. A bunch of covers from her where she's barely dressed in what she barely wears. Some other variants, some Comic Book Legal Defense Funds, some PX, some Discount Comic Book Service, a bunch of stuff from Xenoscope and their various girly covers. I ran across a box full of variant covers and some other fun stuff. And as usual, I find the cheapest price in Gold Cheaper. So if you're interested, come check it out. KRAYZ. Come get some.
And now we get to my favorite part of the show.
Snow Angels.
No, not where I try to find art that's drawn by Wally Wood and inked by John Severin, or vice versa. No, it's freaking a geeking, Joe. What are you freaking on?
Well, I talked about the snow. Hang on a second. I got it. Somebody's knocking at the door here.
Someone knocking at the door. Somebody ringing the bell.
Yes, it was the cat.
Someone knocking
My
at
cat,
the door.
kid's cat. He's poking his head
Somebody
in the door.
ringing the bell.
No, there's a cat butting his head on the door going, why can't I come in? I said,
Do me a favor. Open the door. Let him in.
I've actually had a pretty bad night's sleep because my wife had to do, well, we're all over 55 here. We had to do her colonoscopy, and that led to all the drinking of stuff. She had different stuff to drink because I guess because I'm diabetic, I have to drink gallons of stuff that are non-diabetic, where she had pints of stuff, but still, it was a rough night for her, a rough night sleeping. And so I got up early. She had the process done. It was done really quick, and results were encouraging. So if you're over 55, it's over 50 now, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it should be younger because, oh, I'm so stupid. The Black Panther actor.
Chadwick Boseman.
Thank you. Why my brain? He was 45 and died of colon cancer. He'd been fighting it the whole time. I guess he filmed Civil War and Black Panther. So, again, insurances don't want to pay for it before 50, but you may have to. So go online, look up the signs. I'm not going to turn this into the Comics and Medicine podcast. Hey, that's a great idea for another podcast, Cory. Anyways.
I'll let you do that.
Yeah. Well, I might have to. I got actually, when did I do mine? I did mine when I was 53. And this is Chris's second one. I have a 10-year gap because apparently they found no polyps or anything in mine. Have you had yours, Mr. Strode?
Yes. Remember when I was in the hospital for my stomach issues?
Oh.
I had to do it. So that was 10 years ago. I'm going to have to do it this year.
All right. I have something to
thing
bug you
is-
about every podcast.
The good thing is that this year, when I went last time, I had been in the hospital for 4 days and hadn't eaten anything. And when they gave me the stuff to drink, they gave me like literally a gallon of water.
Yeah.
And after I drank half of it, I remember the nurse came in and said, "Oh, I was supposed to give you the flavor for that too." I said, "Yeah, I know."
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're saying that my tongue is swelling as you. I will tell you this though, if you need someone to give you a ride there and back, I'm always off, at least now, Monday, Tuesday, so I'm there for you if you need it.
Yeah, you and Butch just want to make me laugh so that I mess up far more of the car than you would normally expect.
We'll put a diaper down. Depends. Anyways, I know I always give Gruber a hard time because he's had the same female doctor for years, and he was always resisting, and finally his doctor just blew up at him and said, "Listen, I'm a woman. I have things inserted in me in ways that you'll never dream of. I am tired of listening to you hem and haw about not getting a colonoscopy." Pat's like, yeah, you're right. I go do it. So it's a fact of life, folks. And just not to get too grim, my grandfather passed away from colon cancer. So I have to be, let's just say the prep sucks, but I don't give you any sympathy on that. Just do it. So that's pretty much it freaking wise for me. After we're done here, I will probably, well, I actually had a news nap. I haven't had one of those in a while where I turn on the news, put on a cover, and fall asleep. Usually I stay up because the news has been vaguely interesting, but I will probably crash early tonight or stay up all night, put things on eBay. What the hell? I don't know. How about you, Cory? What you freaking on?
I think I talked last week about how one of the overnight staff is no longer with us. So no, he didn't die. He just quit. This weekend, I was working with a second staff, and they had talked me into doing not just an overnight, but staying for some of the afternoon. Well, the staff got called and had to leave, so I got to stay much longer than I was originally supposed to. I came home for like 2.5 hours, and it was box day, so I at least got the box in the house and opened it and went, ooh, cool, and then turned around and had to go back to work. And it was daylight savings.
I've just sucked an hour away from your life.
And that means that I got an hour less sleep at a place where I don't get a whole lot of sleep anyway.
Now tell me, are you are you thinking, what happened to the poor guys who had their TV shows scheduled for 2 a.m.?
If
They
you
just
actually
disappeared?
look at your the schedule on the TV, they don't list anything for 2 a.m. It goes 1:30, 3.
Those bastards.
So they know what they're doing. So I had to get up an hour early. So basically, it was like getting up at 4:45, my physical time. Instead, it was 5:45 because one of the clients needs their medications at 6, and then we have to be up, because the clients may get up. They're allowed to get up at 6 o'clock. Well, I was there till 8 a.m. Nobody got up. Nobody. Why? Because they don't care if to the clients, it's like, oh, it's Sunday. I don't have to get up. I ain't getting up. And I spent most of Sunday kind of in a haze because I'd gotten so little sleep and so little time away from the group home that I really was just kind of out of it on Sunday. And then today's Monday, back at work. And Monday at the office job is always crazy, so a lot of people calling. A couple of people on the phones were like, they'd put in appeals, the appeals got denied, and they decided to scream and tee off on me. And anytime I would say, all right, your next step is, I want to talk to somebody else because you're not helping me. And I wanted to say, they're not going to be able to help you either if you don't shut up and listen. But I didn't.
But you couldn't. Miss Manners would not approve.
And I'd get fired.
Yeah.
But for one of them, it was easy to tell that the next person he talked to, he did the same thing. So, because I read the notes on the call, and this person called about their appeal being denied, advised why it was denied, and that was all they wrote. And when I was talking to the person, they were wanting to put in a second appeal. I was trying to explain how to do that. They got so angry at me that they said, I want to talk to somebody else who will help me. Well, they must have pulled the same thing with the next guy, because not only did he not help, he didn't even start to tell them how they could put in a second level appeal. The second was a woman who tried every manipulative thing in the book. She cried, she yelled, she insulted, she demanded to talk to a supervisor, boom, boom, boom. And by the end of the call, I was super frustrated because anytime I would say, because we have to go through, here are the reasons why your appeal was denied. And no matter what, I would start, and then she would cut me off and yell and cry and whatever, try her next tactic to try and get me to change it. And then she would let me talk, and I would go, okay, the reason your appeal was denied was and eventually, I want to talk to a supervisor. You're not helping me. And then once again, I kept my mouth shut and I didn't say, I'm not helping you because you're not letting me. So that was my day. Joe, what are you geeking on?
Let's see. Chris last weekend was just at wit's end. She's like you are, Cory. She basically homebody, and her job's driving her nuts. She has less than a year to retire, though, so she's got that going for her, which is nice. But we decided just to take off and take a drive, and so we went up and continued our drive up the St. Croix Scenic Byway Trail. Minnesota's got a number of these trails, and this goes along the St. Croix River, bordering Wisconsin, Minnesota. I think I talked about it a long time ago when we did it, and we almost smeared a dead deer and then ran across another car who did smear the said dead deer and was sitting there with a leaking transmission. No deer this time around. We went during the daylight, ran across a couple state parks. I don't think we've ever been to William O'Brien State Park. I don't know who William O'Brien is because we didn't get out. It was still kind of we still had a lot of snow on the ground. It was melting. Everything was slushy. And we were just kind of out for a drive just to get out of the house for a while. And it's a state park that goes down to the St. Croix River, but that part of the park was closed probably because of the snow and the hill and the pandemic and whatever. But it was pretty crowded because it's close enough to the city, so everybody's out there that day walking their dogs, walking themselves, whatever. Kept going up the trail, ran across another one called Wild River State Park. Now, this is an interesting park because it's very long and it covers most of the Minnesota side of the St. Croix River. Consequently, that means there's not a lot of development, and if you're walking up there, you're probably in the most scenic place, one of the more scenic places in Minnesota. The southern part has more trails, the visitor center, camping. A lot of it's closed. There's a few people that were camping, though, the few places that were open. So I can't imagine well, right now they're probably covered in snow. Maybe not the Wild River. I don't know if the weird thing about this snowstorm is it didn't go very far north. Mankato, which is 50 miles south of us, got a foot of snow. I think we got maybe an inch where I am. I don't know what you got where you are, Cory, if you were in a bigger
Not much.
Bank. Yeah, so I mean, that's how weird the snowbank was. So anyways, it was fun just to get out. We didn't finish the ride up the trail. I got to about Pine City and then decided to bail. I think what happens is because of the way the park is that you're no longer riding on roads really close to the river. I discovered that when Chris and I took a trip up from we went down to Graceland, and then we took the Memphis, and it happened to be this little tiny town called Memphis. But Graceland was there.
To Memphis, Tennessee, you're going to Graceland.
Yep.
Poor boys and pilgrims with families, they're all going to Graceland.
But go to Sun Records too, because that was more interesting than Graceland.
Graceland was weird. It's like the house itself is small.
It is. You're thinking, oh, this is his mansion, but it's pretty much stuck in the 1970s from when Elvis passed away.
And it's not a mansion, really.
Not particularly.
It's more of a ranch house. Now, when I went, it was, I think, 95, 96. There was someone still living there.
Oh.
But I guess no one lives there now. The really fascinating thing is outside the house, when you go to the recording studio and everything. That's monstrously huge.
Well, even the hall with all of Elvis's awards. Chris, my wife, who's a number one Elvis fan, had no idea Elvis was that giving. And we've heard about him, he gave away Cadillacs to his car, but just all the causes and charities he gave to, he just kind of packed all those awards away, he didn't really make a big deal out of them. But now it's an entire hallway just to walk down and look at all the plaques and memorabilia from people that were grateful for Elvis's donation and help. And then, of course, outside the graves of his parents, his baby brother, who passed away as an infant, and Elvis himself, of course, I believe in Eternal Flame. Just an amazing thing. Sun Country was much, much more interesting just because that's where all the magic happened. The actual microphone where Elvis recorded. Apparently, it's still an active studio. YouTube recorded an album there. And I just remember when we were there, we were standing and there was an X on the spot. And the guy was saying, Bono, or was it Bob Dylan, came in, walked up to this spot and got down and kissed it. And as the guy who's telling the story is looking at my wife, because this is the first place that Elvis recorded his first number one album. And he got down on the floor and kissed it. And he just stopped and looked at my wife, and everybody's like, come on. Said, okay, I'll get down and kiss. So she got on her knees, and she kissed that spot and got up. And he goes, wow, that's the first time that's ever worked. And, of course, I got wonderful pictures of it. Somewhere on my Facebook page, I got a picture of me posing with the mic as well. So, yeah, it was just good to get away. We're planning on another trip to get away. Matter of fact, I'll talk with Cory offline because he will either have to have a guest or perhaps use one of our dreaded fill-ins. Dun, dun, dun. We're just going up north again. Did I talk about Coming to America last time?
No, you did not talk about the sequel to Coming to America.
Yeah, Coming to the number 2 America. And I actually watched it last weekend, but I think I was having a joke, a Kray moment. And I was looking at my notes and go, boy, I didn't talk about half the stuff I wanted to talk about. I was really geeking. But I did watch it. I enjoyed it. It was basically kind of a nostalgic romp over the first movie. Very predictable. A lot of dancing, a lot of amazing things. I mean, you're seeing the actors here 30 years later coming back on the show, the ones that are alive. I had no idea Wesley Snipes could move so good. And we went after watching it. I believe it's on Amazon Prime, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And
By the way, I want to point something out. Who made that movie, Joe?
I don't even know.
Paramount.
Ah.
Paramount, which has their new streaming service, which just started. And this big movie that Paramount made is on Amazon.
There's a lot of things I don't get about streaming services, especially when like
all I can think is Paramount. We don't give a shit about our streaming service.
I don't know, but they renamed it from CBS Access.
Yeah.
Oi. Anyways, it was if you saw the original Coming to America, definitely see this one. If you've never seen it, you might want to go back and watch the first one just so you at least get the characters and get the gist. You'll get some of the cameos a little bit better and understand it. The first one, of course, more boobies in it, more Effenheimers in it. We were actually surprised by it because there aren't near, if any, in the second one. Because at that time, Eddie Murphy's character's a parent, so obviously he's not going to be rolling around with naked bath washers in the tub as much as he might have in the first movie. Anyways, it was just a lot of fun. I'm also looking forward to this week. It's going to be busy because not only is Godzilla vs. Kong coming out, and I talked to Gruber earlier today. He's already deriding my decision to watch it on the streaming service because I didn't include it as a freaking, but it's getting busy out at Terminal 2 where I work. I don't get off early anymore, and we're working late because a lot of you people are flying places. So I hope it doesn't come and bite you in your non-masked ass later. But I will probably come home Friday night and watch that, or I might have to just wait till Sunday. But also, I'm actually excited for the JLA Snyder Cut, or Justice League, I guess as it's called. After reading more about it, and people who have seen it already are giving it praises. I mean, it's 4 hours. I figure if I could watch all of the Lord of the Rings movies when I was deployed that one Christmas, I can sit down with this. Plus the fact that it's streaming is at least I can start and stop it when I want. But it sounds like they added back a lot of the stuff that was let out. I believe they filmed new stuff where it was appropriate.
$70 million they spent on new
and
stuff
this
and
is
new special effects.
Just amazing. And I got to admit, I'm not big on Snyder's take, mostly on Superman, but I'm really looking forward to this. And it should be interesting to see because the Justice League movie I enjoyed as it was, but it was whatever. It was just a movie, and it kind of depresses me that Warner / DC can't get their act together to make a coherent Marvel type universe like Marvel did. But knowing how Warner's set up, I guess I understand why they can't. Things bought. You talked earlier about Terry Gilliam. I found at Half Price Book his I guess he's calling it his pre-posthumous memoir. Big hardcover book for half price that's filled with his musings on everything he did, and I'm sure I'll run across the story you talked about, Cory, earlier in the broadcast. And, of course, a lot of his cartoon styles, a lot of pictures, things like that. I figured that'd be kind of fun. I also decided that instead of waiting, it's killing me because there's a lot of different comic-related stuff happening coming up. Cory mentioned one of them on, I don't remember. It was a Nerding Out Con, wasn't it? That's going to be held at...
no, it's the people who used to own Captain Jack's are now basically just setting up at shows.
Yeah, they basically rented a beauty hall. I went to one last year. The one they're doing this year, unless I read it wrong, is only on Saturday.
Nope, it's Saturday and Sunday.
Okay. Sunday I can go.
And it's they say they've got like a couple hundred new boxes.
Yeah, of $1 books, half price sets. I went there Sunday. I work Saturday, and I believe spring break will still be going on, so I probably can't get free. Plus, I don't want to battle the crowds on Saturday. Even that I went on Sunday, I still left with about $300 worth of stuff that to this day I still haven't read, and I'm looking forward to it. So that makes me feel good because most of the stuff that's been happening is on Saturday. There's a gentleman in Woodbury selling off his collection. I actually got to go to one of his things. He was blowing out stuff, buy one, get two free or something ridiculous, just making the final push. I mentioned Nerding Out. They have a convention coming up. Or is that in March or was that last weekend? It was on Saturday only. Whatever it was. And what they do is they open the floor and you can buy a table and you can go to the store, and they have two stores now, of course, the one in Inver Grove Heights that we've been to and the one in Rochester we visited a while back. But it's on Saturday. I can't go on Saturday. I'm at the airport. So to counteract that, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to sometime on Sunday or Monday or Tuesday, I'm just going to go visit one of the comic shops around town that I haven't been to in a while. We're planning a geeking thing coming up. We'll probably have to wait till after Easter to solidify when we're doing that. But I decided this week I'd go down and visit our good friends at Cedar Cliff Collectible. And I went with the express intention of buying a couple omnibuses. He has a couple of
John Byrne ones.
Yeah, I did not, because he had some other ones that I had to stop and wait to remember if I had them or not. And one of them I'm glad I did. He has the Monsters omnibus, both covers. And I have that one. Apparently I either ordered it or I bought it from him cheap at other con. The other one I had to check on was the Guardians of the Galaxy Jim Valentino stuff. And because I have a lot of Guardians here, I just didn't know which ones. And I don't, so I'll probably go back to pick that. I may pick up the John Byrne ones as well. Every time I look at them, I start thinking, I look what's in it, and I'm like, this is all fun stuff, but I don't really want to go out of my way to read it anyways. Plus, I have it in Essentials, and it's on Marvel Unlimited, and it's the ones I really would reread are either the X-Men, Uncanny X-Men he did with Claremont, Alpha Flight, and the Fantastic Four. His other stuff is fun, and then I get away. I leave not buying them, and then I'm like, damn it, I should have bought them because he with the most omnibuses won't get blown away in the upcoming hurricane. That's all I can say. But I did buy some stuff. He has a lot of boxes with dollar comics, and I picked some beat up copies of DC Special. That was was it reprints in the 70s, Cory, or was it some original, some reprints?
For which series again?
It's called DC Special Presents. I've got one.
I believe they were all reprints. I think they were all reprints.
There's one's the Wild Frontier Westerns. The other one's Strangest Sports Stories Ever Told.
Oh, yeah. Those were all reprints.
Okay. So for $1, they're fun. Also, I picked up a ton of Archie Giant series, which had, it was either Everything Archie, Archie Pal and Gal, Jughead Joes. For $1, these are a lot of fun to read. I picked up a couple other ones, Archie Madhouse, a couple Christmas covers. So that was fun. In his regular stuff, he's always got something going on. I picked up a copy of Wonder Woman 48 with a variant cover that has all the women on it. And I may keep it. I may eBay it. I have to see if I have it. He had a copy of Babylon 5 #1 that DC Comics published in 1995. Most of it's considered canon. The #1 was actually autographed by J. Michael Straczynski. And as far as I know, I don't think I have I know I have an autograph of him somewhere. And then I picked up a book. Let's see if Cory does the Strode know. Cory, have you heard of Zodi the Mod Rob?
Actually, I have not.
I didn't either, which is probably why I picked it up. It was a one-issue book that came out of Gold Key in 1970. I haven't even looked at it, but the thing is when I picked it up, Steve told me, these two books are books, the Babylon 5 and the Zodi. These are books I got from Nick. So when he was able to pick up some of the Nick collection as it was being liquidated around town, that was two of them. It just struck me that this is a type of book that Nick would find and take absolute delight in because it's so utterly ridiculous. It's got a multicolored hippie robot on the cover. On one side, the he's got a big, I mean, it looks like the typical tin can robot with a big smile and goofy little squiggly eyes, and two kids walking with him. One side, his side with the umbrella, is nice and sunny. The side with the kids is missing everything, and so they're getting rained on. And he's holding a sign, Zodi's weather prediction: 50% rain, 50% shine. Get it? Half and half cover. He's an astrological terrestrial phenomena doing his thing right here on terra firma. Copyright the Western Publishing Company. Boy, there was some serious acid being dropped in the 70s. That's all I can think of. And that's pretty much it for me. Cory, what you geeking on?
The first thing I am geeking on, South Park, while they have not had a series this year or last year, they have had specials. Last year was the pandemic special. This year they had the vaccine special. And just like South Park has been the last few years, smart, funny, insightful, really up to date, to the point where they were talking about stuff that had happened just last week. Go out of your way to watch it. Really makes a lot of good points with all the jokes. Was every so often people say, oh, you should watch Saturday Night Live. They've gotten so much better. They're really good with their topical humor. And I watch it, and it really doesn't work. For the most part, Saturday Night Live, their topical humor has devolved into, oh, look at who Kate McKinnon is dressed up as, rather than having any good jokes. South Park has really good jokes. The Simpsons, while we're talking about animated shows, got renewed for another 2 years, Joe. Which means that I do believe The Simpsons will outlive us all.
Yes. I think what it is I think they know we're hot on their heels as the best episodic anything in America. They want to make sure we will never beat them.
Although we will eventually. Because they only do 22 episodes a year, and we do 52 episodes a year. Let me see how many episodes
drop down
have there been of The Simpsons. How many Simpsons episodes? Oh, here, let's see. How many Simpsons movies have there been? One. I like that here. It's like, how many Simpsons episodes are there? And you know how you type in a question to Google and it'll show what other people are asking. How many Simpsons movies have there been? One. So let's see. I'm going to need to go to Wikipedia. Simpsons episode guide. There it is. Simpsons. 699 episodes. So the next one will be episode 700. We are at 503. We are catching up.
We will.
And eventually we will, because, again, we do more episodes a year than they do. It'll take a few years, but we will beat them.
Yes.
We beat ECW. I'm very proud of ECW. He outlasted the original ECW. Let's see, comic-wise, I am reading the new, kind of the rebooted DC books. And the first issue of the new Superman book, I really liked it. It's issue 29, drawn by Phil Hester. And the idea is that Superman's son is wanting to spend a lot of time with him because he knows that and he confesses that he's not ready to take over being Superman. And he then lets loose that he knows Superman will die soon. He knows because he's been in the future, and he knows how it happens, and he knows it's going to happen, and he doesn't think there's a way he can prevent it. So there's our hook for the next big Superman story. But Phil Hester, I love his art. I've always loved Phil Hester's art, way back from when he was doing indie books. And he's also a very close friend of the show. No, he doesn't know the show, but he does show up at all the MCBA conventions. So he lives in Iowa, so it's not hard for him to drive up. So we're going to have a Superman artist if they ever start doing conventions again, because he drives up for all the shows. Joe, you talked about the Marvel Western book you read when you did your last set of reviews.
Yes.
So I had to go and dig out the Marvel Max Apache Skies, which was the last ride of the Marvel Western Heroes, written by John Ostrander and drawn by Leonardo Manco. Oh, it's so damn good. It's a shame that it's not available as a book. It is such a good comic. It takes the Marvel Western heroes, and the way it kind of gets around the fact that they were, kind of just superhero Western goofy comics, was that those are the dime novel stories about these characters, and these are the real people that those stories were based on. 4-issue miniseries from the Max line. If they never do another Marvel Western thing again, I'm okay with this being the conclusion. Although, for copyright purposes, they're going to do another one. And then Box Day. And this was one of the coolest box days in quite a while. Let's see. There was the Black Panther Epic Collection Volume 3 Panther's Prey, which reprinted the Don McGregor story from Marvel Comics Presents, which was him and Gene Colan, which was put out as a trade paperback about 2-3 years ago. Well, that's in this Epic collection, as well as the never before collected Panther's Prey, which was a 4-issue prestige format series that was Don McGregor's story. After that would set up for the Black Panther to marry Monica Lynn, which was his girlfriend way back from the 60s that he used in all of his other stories. And she was then kind of written out and ignored when Jim Owsley / Christopher Priest started doing a Black Panther story. So Don McGregor wrapped up her story in the recent Black Panther special. But, this is such good stuff. And Dwayne Turner's art on this because it was the prestige format, it was beautifully done anyway. But the Epic line uses the same paper and the same printing. Just a beautiful, beautiful book. From Hell Master Edition came out, which is the hardcover with color. The art has been restored. Looks more like it was originally drawn. Basically, the best printing of this story from Hell, which is Alan Moore and Eddie Campbell, doing a story about Jack the Ripper and how Jack the Ripper caused the 20th century. If you've seen the movie From Hell, you can ignore it and throw it away, because the comic is so much better. Because it's, come on, it's Alan Moore. We also got the 300th Marvel Masterwork, which was Howard the Duck. It reprints issues 1 through 14. I got the special 300 cover. And Joe, do you remember why I bought it, even though I have this as comics, as a trade paperback, and as an omnibus?
You had a hole in the ceiling?
No, they only made 660 of these. I believe this is an investment, because I have a feeling in about 3-4 years this book's going to be selling for $300-$500.
Did that just come out?
Yes, came out last week.
Oh, allow me to look onto the eBays. What was give me the title again?
Marvel Masterwork Howard the Duck, Volume 1, the Direct Market Variant Edition 300, which has 300 on the cover. They only made 660 of them. The Dr. Aphra Omnibus was in my box, but that's not the omnibus that I was all giddy about. The omnibus I was all giddy about isn't listed as an omnibus, but it may as well be. And that is X of Swords, the big X-Men crossover from last summer.
I saw that
thing right there.
Steve
It's not called an omnibus, but it's $100, $50 if you prepaid. And I'm looking forward to reading that one.
Yeah, that will probably come in my next box day.
And the HBO Max, where all of the Warner movies show up on there this year, I did watch the Wonder Woman 84, which was, was okay. The Little Things, which has left the service, was the Denzel Washington crime movie, which I thought was, again, it was okay. I would not have gone to see it in theaters. Tom and Jerry, which was god-awful. And I asked friends of mine who have kids what they thought, and most of them said that their kids lost interest and wandered off, so it's not just me who thought it was bad. And then Judas and the Black Messiah, which was nominated for some Oscars, left the service. So when HBO Max adds these new movies that were theatrical releases, they only add them for 30 days. So when they do add Godzilla vs. Kong, or the Snyder Cut of Justice League, Mortal Kombat, remember that these are only going to be on the service for 30 days, so you will want to watch those as soon as possible. And the other thing that I have been spending my time on is, I've told Joe about this, New Japan Pro Wrestling is on Roku. No, they don't have the New Japan channel on there, which is stupid, and I do not understand, because New Japan Pro Wrestling is available free on the Roku channel. If you have a Roku, you have the Roku channel. They have New Japan Pro Wrestling. They have all of Wrestle Kingdom 14 in much easier to digest hour-long segments, and now they are putting on a new episode every week, which highlights one or two matches that were from last year. So if you don't know anything about New Japan, this is a great way to get introduced to the style, the stars, and the commentary is all in English, so you don't have to worry about subtitles. Believe it or not, kids, you'll listen to us blather on about funny books for over 2 hours.
I know.
And as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. Joe?
I was telling you earlier that Chris and I are looking to do a 2-week vacation later this year, and we're going to talk about it when we head north for a while. But Chris was like, you know what? Because right now airline prices are so cheap, she put up a world map and gave me a dart and said, throw this. Wherever it lands, that's where we're going when the pandemic ends. Turns out we're spending 2 weeks buying the fridge. Oh, I got a chuckle out of them. That's time to hit my music.